Chapter 3. On the way to the Smith house, it was hard for Emma to say if the problem was the roads so much as the Channel 9 van itself. The roads were terrible, of course, literally dirt in some places, full of divots and potholes, but the van was so old and so small that she hadn't been surprised to learn its shock absorption qualities were entirely shot. It certainly needed new tires, and maybe a seatbelt or two. From all the bouncing around everybody was doing, Emma's head hurt enough, but the constant bickering was giving her some second thoughts about whether the long-term benefits of interning for Channel 9 was worth the pain. Tom slowed the van as they approached the open gate of the residence, and Dana leaned forward, her nose wrinkled. She patted her beehive back into shape from its many brushes with the ceiling while emitting what was just another in a string of complaints. Ew, this place? I can't believe I went from the news desk to this.
You're lucky you have this job after the incident with the poodle,
said Gary, barely looking over his shoulder from where he slouched in the passenger's seat. That could happen to anyone. But to her credit, Dana gave up. She flicked an almost sheepish glance toward Emma. While leaning back in her seat with her arms folded, the reporter asked the intern, "How's your ankle?" Emma fixed the cuff of her sock to better hide the athletic bandage beneath. "It's okay," she lied. "Thanks for asking." In sprinting down the hall to wrangle the poodle, Emma had rolled her ankle enough that it had very nearly broken. It was not as non-functional as that, but she was definitely more deliberate in her steps. She carefully tried it as Tom parked the car, rotating the joint left and right and finding herself satisfied that it could take a little bit of stress without much issue. Gary tossed the cigarette out the window.
"All right, let's get started. We don't have all day. Where the hell is the real estate agent?"
As everybody got out of the van, the producer's beady eyes scanned the property through aviator sunglasses he even wore indoors.
"I agreed to give him $50 to let us shoot this story. There's his car."
An ugly old Datsun sat along a row of trees, far across the wide lawn of dead grass. While Emma made her way up to the rickety porch of the dilapidated home, Gary muttered to himself again,
"Where the hell is he?"
"The door is locked," Emma said, glancing back over her shoulder as she rattled the doorknob. Dusting off her hands and crossing back down the peeling porch, she told her boss, "Wherever he is, I don't think he's ready for us yet."
"Christ, intern, what's your name again?"
"Emma," she answered crisply, trying not to take too much offense.
"Yeah,"
said Gary, as if he had been testing her rather than ignoring her humanity for the past several months.
"Yeah, Emma. Make yourself useful and find us a way in, will you?"
"You mean like break in?" With a nervous glance over her shoulder, Emma said, "Don't you think we should just wait here for a minute?" "I do not want to stand out here all day," Dana groused, arms folding around herself with a shiver. "It's 50 freaking degrees out here, and I didn't bring my coat because I thought we would be going inside, Gary." While the reporter shot daggers into the back of her producer's balding skull, said producer elegantly ignored her. Before Emma knew what had happened, Gary had slipped one ham hock around her slim shoulders. He guided her toward the side of the house in an overfamiliar way that she absolutely hated, saying,
"Now, Emma, it's not breaking and entering. It's not even breaking. As long as you don't have to break a window. But hey, if you find a window that's already broken,"
he winked at her in a cartoonish way,
"far be it from me to complain about you using it to get in. You just be an angel and get us inside. Let me worry about the ethics. We already have permission from the real estate agent. We're not going to be in any kind of trouble. I promise."
"But—"
"Don't take too long," said
Gary, slapping her on the back of the shoulder before returning to the rest of the crew. As their conversation resumed, Emma raked a grim eye across the property. Weeds had completely overwhelmed every square inch not already host to brooding trees or patches of withered leaves arranged in a pattern suspiciously resembling poison ivy. Emma grimaced, grateful that days spent bird hunting with her grandfather had taught her to avoid it and many other evil plants. Maybe she'd find a side door unlocked. Everything would work out smoothly. No such luck, of course. There were no side doors, only a rotting gray facade she followed through the high weeds while scanning hither and thither for snakes. The wind picked up and whipped hairs from her bob across her eyes. A few locks stuck between her cheeks and the big round frames of her glasses. Frowning, she removed them to polish as she walked a few more yards. If there was a snake, maybe it was better to just not see it. As she slid the frames back on her nose, Emma rounded the corner of the house. Her vision resolved from the faded mess of unaugmented reality with a gasp. It certainly wasn't that it was picture perfect, and she would have had to press up against its dirty windows to confirm that every single plant was dead, so it wasn't that either. The greenhouse was just somehow so unexpected and frightening. What was it about the little building? Who could possibly be frightened of a greenhouse? Emma admonished herself for her silly reaction, but, all the same, the primitive part of her mind that once kept watch for lions in the savannah tried to find the source of the fear. Then it came to her. The grayish panes of dirty glass, the dense vibrations of death emanating from within. That little greenhouse here reminded Emma of a mausoleum. That was it, exactly. A little tomb. Shuddering, Emma turned her back to the hateful thing and reminded herself she was at work. A back door mocked her with a window to the kitchen, but an unyielding knob. After jiggling it a few times, she pressed against the dusty glass with her hands, cupping either side of her face. "Hello? Real estate agent? Sir?" Just where was this guy that he couldn't hear them? Anyway, the house was big, but it wasn't that big. Maybe he was up in the attic. The attic, or... Eureka! A basement window was not only unlocked, but free to be pushed all the way into the house. The thing was small, but between the window well and the wide swing of the hinges, Emma was able to slide into the basement feet first. Of course, the landing was the hard part. Emma hissed sharply as her bad ankle caught half her weight, her good ankle unable to take it all for fear of crippling itself in the process. Seeing stars after her brief explosion of bright pain, Emma stabilized herself against the brick wall and struggled to see through the darkness. Not that there was much to be seen. After her eyes adjusted enough to define a few vague shapes, Emma used a mop and a stool to prop open the frosted window and permit a greater influx of light. Even with the overcast weather, this proved far more helpful than standing around in the dark. Grayish haze cut through the inky oppression and defined shapes like a washer, a laundry line, a fuse box. A switch on the wall, too. She tried it and frowned, looking up at the ceiling. "This seems like it's the realtor's problem," she told herself with a shake of her head before carefully making her way up the dusty stairs. And what dust! The place had been abandoned for all of 3 years, but Emma supposed 3 years was a very long time for a house to go without any cleaning. Add to that the fact that the last people in this place were probably cops bustling around to collect evidence, and, well, Emma probably shouldn't have been too surprised by the mess. At the top of the increasingly dark stairs, she was stopped by a door against which she gently rested her hands. Unlocked, thankfully. What would she have done if it wasn't? Shuddering, Emma banished the thought and let herself into the kitchen. "Hello? Real estate agent?" Nothing answered Emma but her own voice. More clutter everywhere. So hard to see past it was almost difficult to notice the doorway that seemed it would let her out toward the front of the house. Slipping through it, Emma made her way to the living room and breathed a sigh of relief. The front door stood just past another, down a little hall. As she hurried through the living room, her foot nudged something that rolled. With only a few seconds of hesitation, Emma stooped to pick it up. A flashlight! Thank God, her eyes were really starting to strain. Smiling at it, too overjoyed to deeply question its presence, Emma straightened up and tried the beam. Light poured across the eerie room of stored furniture, each piece draped in white sheets, as though the souls of the Davenport or the footstool were bound to the house more tangibly than any murder victim. It was strange to think about a murderer as being a person who lived in a house, a real human being with a mother and father, maybe even a brother or sister. How were they traumatized by what their relative had done? How did it affect a person to discover that someone they knew and interacted with on a regular basis was a sadist with blood on their hands? Emma shivered. God willing, she would never have to know the answer to that question. If someone she cared about turned out to be a killer like the Easter Ripper, Emma wasn't sure she would be able to keep her own sanity. Frankly, She wasn't sure she was going to keep it now. The beam trained on the floor before her. Emma navigated the haunting living room while keeping a close eye out for loose nails or anything else that might have damaged her already tender foot. She was so focused on looking for objects on the floor that Emma didn't notice the floor itself until she had almost exited into the front hallway. Then she stopped. Slowly, Emma glanced back the way she'd come. She let the flashlight beam do the same. In a house full of dust, the living room floor was clean.